All right, class, let's get going here. Let's go with chapter 6. All right, we're going to chapter 6. What is chapter 6? What are we dealing with? We're dealing a lot more with ethics. So this is we start with managerial and organizational ethics. We're going to talk about how ethics, they come from different levels. If there's one word that you're going to have to know for this chapter, it's ethics, 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 ethics. So we're going to talk about managerial and start with managerial and organizational ethics. And there's the ethics, the issues arise at different levels. We're going to get into right here in the four main levels where ethics come from. You have to deal with in the workplace: personal ethics, managerial and organizational levels, industry or professional levels, and societal and global levels. First, personal levels. This is kind of the kind of analogy. We see the personal levels are the bad apples. These are the individuals. The individuals are the people, the individual persons, and how your own individual personal ethics can, how you kind of carry those into the organization. You can start with situations that we face in our daily lives. These are all questions you probably ask yourself. You don't think about it, but we kind of always blur that line. There's that gray area. Should I cheat on my income tax return by overinflating my charitable contributions to get a bigger write-off? I don't know if some of you have done that. Consider doing that. You make a donation to the Goodwill or something. You can get a receipt. Do you make that for a little bit more than it should? People do that all the time. Is it right? No. But do we do it? Sure. Should I tell a professor I need this course to graduate this semester when I really don't? I get that all the time. I mean, literally the emails I get from sometimes from students at Citrus and at Chapman of just, you would save my life. Literally, you would save my life if I can take you in this class. And sometimes they don't have the prerequisites fulfilled. I can't. There's only so much that I can do. So you get those kind of things that students send that kind of stuff out frequently. Should I download music from the internet, although I realize it is someone else's intellectual property? Sometimes you're doing the wrong thing, but you do it because who's really getting harmed here? Some fancy big musician who makes a lot of money. Is it the right thing to do? No. Do you know it's the wrong thing to do? Probably you do. Should I connect? Here's a good one. Should I connect to Netflix's platform using a friend's log-on information rather than paying for my own account? We've all done stuff like this. I've used my brother's account for like HBO Max, even though I do have HBO, so I don't have my own account. Or maybe when I didn't have it, I'd use my brother's account. You share accounts. Is that the right thing to do? No, it's not. But do we do it anyway? Yes, we do. That's kind of that gray area, or those personal levels of ethics. Then within an organization, you get your managerial and organizational levels. We kind of consider those the bad barrels. Instead of the bad apples, those are the bad barrels. So those are ethical issues at the organizational / company level in their role as employees, managers, and entrepreneurs. So at the kind of more the business level, should I set high performance goals for my work team to benefit the organization, even though I know it may cause them to cut corners to achieve such goals? You want to have certain levels achieved, but are these goals that you set going to be kind of more counterproductive ethically to the company as a whole? Should I overreport the actual time I worked on this project, hoping to get paid, hoping to get overtime pay or additional recognition? We may have all kind of, wrestled with some of those issues. Should I authorize a subordinate team member to sidestep company policy so that when we close the deal, we can be rewarded by month's end? A lot of that happens a lot of the time. Should I misrepresent the warranty time on some product I'm selling in order to get the sale? I've had situations like that before. It's like, you really sell the warranty, the lifespan of a product because you want to make that sale, you want to close that sale. Are they always the right things to do? No. Do people do them a lot? Probably. Then there's the managerial, and this is a continuation of the managerial and environmental levels. The following were some of the types of misconduct observed and reported, along with the percentage of time these items were mentioned. People mention this: 35% of the time, favoritism towards certain employees. We've all felt that. 25% of the time, management lying to employees. You feel that all the time. They basically management sometimes will tell you one thing to kind of appease you in the moment, but it might be not always quite the most honest. 25% of the time, there's a conflict of interest. 22% of the time, improper hiring practices. Why did that person get hired? They're not qualified. Oh, they're a friend. They're an acquaintance. They're the boss's, neighbor. They owe somebody a favor. You made a recommendation for somebody, but somebody else got hired. 22% of the time, abusive behavior. That's kind of scary. And then 23% of the time, health violations. Then there's the industry or professional levels. This is something that's kind of more just kind of indicative of the industry. There's that bad orchard, essentially. It's kind of just a sign of what's going on in the industry. This is related to the industry, might be the profession of which an individual is a member: accounting, engineering, pharmacy, medicine, journalism, or law. Examples: is the safety standard we electrical engineers adopted really adequate for protecting the consumer in this age of do it yourself? Are we putting too many hurdles or barriers in place? Is this standard contract we realtors have adopted actually in keeping with the financial disclosure laws that have recently been strengthened? That's a big question for realtors. Is it ethical for telemarketers? This is a big one. When you're doing telemarketing, what you want to do is you want to make sure you can have a high contact rate. You can contact potential customers. Is it ethical for telemarketers to make cold calls to prospective clients during the dinner hour when we suspect they will be at home? And the last one: is it ethical for accountants to allow a restatement of earnings that can cause investors to lose money and confidence in the market? These are all legit questions that deal with the ethical dilemmas in the industry or professional level. More in the industry or professional level, look at the healthcare industry. They're basically kind of taken like an oath or a creed. It's like, first, do no harm. But at the same time, healthcare industry wants to take advantage of big data with dehumanizing patients. It's turning patients into numbers, turning patients into different risk factors, how you can essentially not serve those risk factors. Devising fair responses to did the healthcare industry, did they have fair responses to pandemics or other widespread medical emergencies? We really saw that during COVID. Absolutely, the first thing in healthcare is do no harm, but did you have a fair response to giving people the proper care during like a COVID? Also, in the college admissions industry, Operation Varsity Blues really kind of pulled the curtain back and saw what was happening in the college admission scandal, basically kind of using kind of a backdoor way to get students into universities using athletics as a kind of way to sneak people in. So, and in some industries, that's not supposed to be the norm, but it becomes the norm. And how does it become the norm? Because there's this kind of the gray area ethically gets blurred, and people start accepting commonly, or the standard operating procedures, the SOPs, as normal. When they of doing things unethically, it becomes like a normal thing. Managerial ethics and ethical principles. What are managerial ethics? That's, for the most part, entails making decisions that have ethical implications or consequences. What is we've heard the term conflict of interest before, but what's kind of the definition as far as ethically, as far as this class goes and this topic goes? Conflict of interest is when the individuals have to choose between their interest and the interest of someone else or some other group. Do you have kind of an ethical interest in something? Should you step out? Should you step aside? Then the conventional approach, making a comparison between a decision, action, or policy and the prevailing norms of acceptability. The Easter egg for this class is pasta. I don't like pasta. I mean, I'll tolerate pasta, especially noodles. I don't like pasta and noodles. I'm not a big fan, and I think it's kind of glorified tofu, but that's another topic that we can have someplace else. So the principles approach to ethics, the principles approach is based on the idea that employees and managers desire to anchor their decisions, actions, or policies on a more solid foundation than that provided with the conventional approach. Basically, you have kind of a deeper understanding, not deeper understanding, but deeper principles to ethics that go above and beyond kind of what is required, expected in a business setting, or specifically for an industry. What is an ethics principle? Essentially, the golden rule. What's the golden rule? Treat people the way you want to be treated. And kind of like the Don Quixote, if you see that on there, that on the screen, that's how you pronounce it. I know I pronounced Don Quixote for a long time. The Don Quixote, honesty is the best policy. So essentially, you know what the simple way to think about ethics principles are: treat people you want to be treated, and honesty is the best policy. When you think in the world of business, is that possible? Does that happen a lot? It's happening more than it used to. It used to be kind of more cutthroat, but business is really kind of changing and adapting to be fairer, to be more ethical, and to be more sustainable. And especially because if you're not, your stakeholders, like we talked a lot, your stakeholders will be very, very responsive. They will be upset, and the stakeholder, the kind of the breadth and the width of stakeholders is widening. The principle of utilitarianism, right? That's just the consequential principle. In its simplest, utilitarianism asserts, or simplicity, it says, we should always act so as to produce the greatest ratio of good to evil for everyone. Just essentially do the right thing. And essentially, the attractiveness of utilitarianism is that it forces the decision, this decision that we make to think about the general welfare or the common good. What is the best thing for the most amount of people? Essentially, that's utilitarianism. The principles of justice, or the fairness principle. This is a very kind of feel-goody kind of, hey, let's do the right thing kind of chapter. The principle of justice, the fair treatment of each person. But also you got to ask yourself, there's a couple big questions. What is meant by justice? That's not always kind of just a clearly defined definition, essentially. So there's a few different things to think about. What do we consider justice? What is meant by justice? There's distributive justice. That's just the distribution of benefits and burdens in societies and organizations. How do we equally distribute justice, essentially? Compensatory justice, compensating someone for past injustice. You see these kind of things with like reparations, essentially. How do we compensate people or families for past injustices? Some people think it's a good thing to do. It's a fair thing to do. Other people think, hey, you know what? I had nothing to do with this. My family had nothing to do with this. Why should somebody else benefit because of something that happened in the past? So these are just big questions to have. I'm not saying what should happen, what should not happen, or even really having an opinion on it. But it's just, about fairness, about ethics, and about justice. And there's procedural justice, fair decision-making procedures, practices, or agreements. So what is that process that we take moving forward with fairness and injustice? The Rawls principle. Rawls is basically just kind of an expert in this area in this area of justice and fairness. The two underlying principles for this theory are: each person has an equal right to the most extensive basic liberties, compatible with similar liberties for all others. Once again, it's that overall feeling of fairness. And there's that social and economic inequalities are arranged so that they are both A, reasonably expected to be everyone's advantage, and B, attached to positions and offices open to all. Fairness, equality, as far as accessibility, and opportunities for all. The golden rule. We talked about the golden rule a little bit earlier, but here's kind of digging a little bit deeper into the golden rule, also known as the ethic of reciprocity. This argues that if you want to be treated fairly, treat others fairly. It's like kind of a no-brainer, but it's in a kind of a world of business, how business has evolved, and it's me, very self-serving. You have to remind yourself about these kind of things. If you want your privacy protected, for example, respect the privacy of others. We are not to make exceptions for ourselves. You are just part of the greater populace. In essence, the golden rule personalizes business relationships and brings the idea of self-perceived fairness into business deliberations. John Maxwell, he's kind of a leadership expert or leadership guru. He basically says how he basically wraps all of his teachings and philosophies and principles around the golden rule. It says that leaders should adopt the golden rule for the following 4 reasons. 1, the golden rule is accepted by most people. 2, the golden rule is easy to understand. It's like the easiest thing to comprehend and absorb. 3, the golden rule is a win-win philosophy, right? It's like, and here's something I've always thought about in business. Business, the best deals to make are deals that are good for both parties. It's a win-win. You win, the person that you're dealing with wins. That's how most, or if not all, business deals should be. You win, and the person that you win. And I've had many situations and many circumstances where I'm dealing with people, different like university partners, or even when I was in the business and I was more having businesses. I would think, okay, what's a big win? What's the objective for the other people involved in this? So because if I could have something that's kind of not, yeah, sure, self-serving. Here's my goal. What I want to do. I want to win in this situation, but here's my objective. And then also think, okay, the person that I'm also dealing with on this deal, what's their goal? What's their objective? What's their sweet spot? What's their motivation? And if I can make them win and me win, why not? It works for everybody. And then number 4, the golden rule acts as a compass when you need direction. You don't know what to do. You need a little direction. Think about what is the golden rule. Servant leadership. I'm a big fan of servant leadership. I worked with people definitely who were not servant leaders, and that is very difficult to deal with people when it's just all about them and they're kind of just narcissist on their best day and their worst day, a toxic narcissist. But servant leadership, the moral principle of serving others first. How can you serve your team? How can you serve your staff? Robert K. Greenleaf of AT&T, he was kind of a veteran leader of AT&T for almost 40 years. He takes a strong position in servant leadership. And the 10 key characteristics for servant leadership, as far as Greenleaf is concerned: listening. You have to listen to your people, not your people. Listen, that sounds bad. Listen to your staff. Listen to your teammates, your coworkers. Empathy. Have a heart. You know what? Get to know people too. That's such an important part of leadership, is really getting to know your people. Then there's the healing portion. If there's something goes wrong, there's that healing portion. Admit fault, admit blame. Persuasion is big. Being able to persuade people that you work with and have and allowing and having that kind of that equal. It's very kind of where you kind of can reciprocate persuasion. It goes both ways. Awareness, always being aware of what's going on. The foresight, kind of looking in the future, looking forward. Conceptualization, being able to conceptualize and to look at kind of big issue, kind of macro events that are happening and how you can kind of tackle those together. The commitment to growth of people. You have to have it's like I've had many times where I would bring in somebody and hire somebody and say, okay, listen, I think you're too qualified for this, but I think you could be a good fit here long term. I want to get you in here. Traditionally, people in this role have been in this role for 3 or 4 years. I do not want you to be in this role for more than 18 months or 24 months. And I'm going to try to find you something good. And even if that means for me to losing you working directly on our team, the best thing for you is for you to be in here for a short period of time and grow and have personal growth and development. And then stewardship and building community. That stewardship is just kind of, hey, everybody's kind of like, it's kind of like everybody's in the boat. Everybody grab an oar, grab an oar, get in this boat, and we're going to see if we can get some. We're going to row the boat together, essentially in unison. And if everybody's doing that properly, as myself as a leader, I can kind of just take a step back, and the team is going to get us to the right place. Yeah, I'll be the leader of the team, but I'm not going to, and I might get credit for some of the victories that we have, but just always make sure that I'm just kind of a steward of this team and this process, and also build a new community. How do you build that community within your organization and build something really special? Managing organizational ethics. The 3 major questions which can drive the consideration of managing organizational ethics are, because this is a big question, because how do you have those ethics within your organization? And what are your big goals? The first one is what factors contribute to ethical or unethical behavior in the organization? Have those conversations, right? Two, what action strategies or best practices might the management team use to improve the organization's ethical climate? Three, what psychological and organizational processes or processes, as some people say, revealed through behavioral ethics come into play when ethical decision making and behavior are pursued? This is just basically setting those expectations within the company, in your organization, in relation to ethics. The influences which can affect organizational behaviors. The big four would be the behavior of your superiors. That's a big one. Behavior superiors is ranked as a primary influence on unethical behavior in 3 studies examined. In other words, the influences of bosses is powerful. It said that the fish stinks from the head down, basically. So whoever's in charge, you have a responsibility and a burden to basically kind of establish the ethical norms. Behaviors of one's peers was ranked high in 2 of the 3 studies. People do pay attention to what their peers are doing and expecting. When you see your peers doing something and getting away with something, then you're going to do the same thing, because to you, that is now the new norm. The third one is the industry or professional ethics practices, ranked in the upper half in all 3 studies. This is what are the kind of commonly accepted procedures and ethics within an industry. For example, if you're in the beauty industry, for example, and everybody in that industry is operating in a certain way, something you're doing might technically be kind of unethical, but if everybody is doing it, then you do it too. You know, if you're in the service industry, in the restaurant industry, seeing how people act with customers, act with the kind of the bus staff, if you're a server, how you do or do not clean up after yourself, how you do or do not contribute tips to some other people, that basically sets the tone. And personal financial need ranked should be last in all 3 studies. But let's not assume it does not matter, because for some people it absolutely does. Improving so let's say you have problems with your organization, your ethical culture. How do you improve it? Business ethics surveys found the key drivers to improving ethical culture. 1, employee awareness of program elements that help employees navigate through potential ethical problems. There's probably not even a system in place, but you need to have that system, that awareness to basically guide people into processes. 2, employee perceptions of the organization's culture based on commitment, modeling, and communication from superiors. Once again, that's kind of just a extension of point 1, but there's no process in place. And 3, key ethics outcomes, such as pressure to compromise standards, observed misconduct, reporting of misconduct, and retaliation against those reporting misconduct. The behavioral ethics, achieving a deeper understanding. This gets into kind of like, bias or bias. Am I almost done here? Okay, how many do I have here? Okay, absolutely. Oh, shoot, sorry. Sorry, where we were. Ignore me for a second here. Is this where we were? Yeah. The conformity bias. It's a tendency people have to take their cues from ethical behavior from their peers rather than exercising their own independent ethical judgment. A lot of this stuff is kind of a little overlapping and slightly redundant, and there's a lot of duplication in some of these slides, but it is very important. And there's an overconfidence bias, tendency for people to be more confident of their own moral character and behavior than they have objective reason to be. It's essentially kind of like, hey, you got it figured out. You're more important than the business, and you're more important than your coworkers. The self-serving bias, this is an important one. This is the propensity people have to process information in a way that serves to support their pre-existing beliefs and their perceived self-interest. You think that what you might be doing might be wrong, and then you kind of look for something. You look for the definition of what is actually needed, and you're like, oh yeah, I can do this. I can kind of tweak this slightly. These are the rules. It doesn't say anything in there about X, Y, or Z. So that's when you kind of bend the rules to you. And moral equilibrium. People keeping an ethical scoreboard in their heads and use this information when making future decisions. Essentially, yeah, okay, this might be wrong, but I've done so much right. That's okay. We all do this stuff, you know. The 5 barriers to an ethical organization. Um, these are kind of how it's difficult for organizations to become ethical, and why there's big 5 barriers. Ill-conceived goals means poorly set goals by the organization. Two, motivated blindness, overlooking the questionable actions of others, turning the other way when people do something questionable. Now, here's the thing to think about. All these things we're talking about. Imagine this what a manager has to go through with all this, in addition to being profitable, in addition to kind of making sure the company's going the right direction. You have to basically be kind of the hall monitor, the traffic cop of morals. Not fun, and you have to constantly hold people accountable for some of these things. Not fun. Motivated blindness, overlooking questionable actions of others. Indirect blindness, that's unfair accountability. Some people get disciplined while others do not. The slippery slope, people not noticing others' unethical behavior, kind of an extension of the point right before that. And overcoming values, letting questionable behaviors pass if the outcome is good. Yeah, somebody's doing something kind of wrong, leaving early, not staying, not coming in late, leaving early, but boy, do they produce. Jimmy Johnson, the famous football coach from the Dallas Cowboys, he would say, when some of his star players would get in trouble, he would say, "Well, they kind of earned the right. If you're not a star player and you get in trouble, then you might be gone. If you're a star player, we'll look the other way." Essentially, so that's kind of is that right ethically? No, but it always happens. Ethics and compliance programs and officers. Let's say you kind of want to start to have a kind of an ethical program in your business or ethics team. What's that process look like? So one of the most important strategies in creating an ethical workplace culture is the use of ethics and compliance programs, along with officers to lead them in their initiatives and responsibilities. This is kind of essentially taking this out of the manager's hands and have a kind of a little team who will look at ethics. This is more common, but also just know if you're on that team, you might be looked at as like a little tattletale, but so it's not, it can be a good team to be on, but also it can be kind of, you can be judged. The LPEC, the leading professionals in ethics compliance, certified professionals representing more than 60 countries and a range across all industries. Compliance programs typically include the following features: written standards of ethical workplace conduct, very important. Ethics training on the standards, very important. Mechanisms to seek ethics advice. Methods or means for reporting misconduct anonymously. That's a big one. You see something happen? Is there a safe culture to report that anonymously? Performance evaluations on ethical conduct. Are you comfortable, your organization, kind of holding people's feet to the fire? As far as ethical conduct, systems to discipline violators. And if you do something wrong, what's that follow that's going to be? What's that accountability going to be? And a set of guiding values or principles, just overall a set of guiding values and principles, which might be in the next slide. Yes, it is. Essentially, Google, they say that their code underscores the importance of speaking up and taking action against wrongdoing. Coca-Cola. A quick glance at the Coca-Cola code of business conduct reveals a clear underlying theme: integrity, which is good. Hershey. This code of conduct does an excellent job of promoting Hershey's culture while clearly indicating how employees should act. Here's the culture and here's how you should act, right? Are some in the Microsoft provides its employees with a visually appealing, easy to read document that is reflective of the organization's values. Now, companies put this out there. Yes, they put this out there because this is important, but also sometimes they put it out there because they feel like they have to. And is this a real living, breathing document? For some companies it is. For others, it's something they got to check the box for. So you just kind of have to be, you have to understand that. Business ethics training. This is important on your ethics training. Here are what are the goals for ethics training? One, to learn the fundamentals of business ethics. What's the difference between right and wrong? Two, to learn to solve ethical dilemmas. So when those ethical dilemmas come up, How do you solve those? 3, to learn to identify causes of unethical behavior. 3, to learn about common managerial ethical issues. 4, to learn whistleblowing criteria and risks. And 5, to learn to develop a code of ethics and execute an internal ethical audit. Corporate transparency, very, very, very important to make sure that you have a kind of a culture of transparency. This basically just refers to the quality, characteristic, or state in which activities, processes, practices, decisions take place in companies become open or visible to the outside world. So the outside world can kind of look in at a company and say, how transparent are they ethically, and what's that really that work life, workplace, business, ethical culture? What does that really look like? And that's it. All right, so that's it for chapter 6. Chapter 7 will be coming up. What is up? All right, take care. Bye.